There's some strange, disturbing magic going on with the number 2. Unlike 3, when the sequel comes out, there's a 90% chance that cheeks that once sucked no longer do, and the flaws that did fuck the experience no longer FUD. And for Dungeon Siege, having played them in a rapid-fire fashion, I can see that the second game is just pure refinement. This is part 2 in a series of 2, the first part being the first part in a series of 2, so if you wish to see both parts of this 2-part series, then please go back and watch episode 1, where I looked at Dungeon Siege 1, and one thing I constantly complained about was the lack of control I felt the entire time while playing it. The designers obviously understood and cared about the fact that so many things were a hassle, and controlling 8 characters at once felt clumsy, so they attempted to give you controls for the AI characters, hotkeys, a click and drag feature, and just all sorts of selectables, but these were just patches on an otherwise bloated system. The ideas were fun though, so it felt like a shame that selecting spells and attacks and keeping track of a full party felt like trying to corral a little league team with all those fucking gremlin children running around, because the base of what you did in combat and what your goals were for your party growth felt so enjoyable. And then Dungeon Siege 2, it's just so much tighter, and in most ways it's a huge step up from the first game. Less ability for AI controls to screw you, more options with combat, more streamlined and exciting gearing, auto-casting spells. All in all, it's what the first game needed. But let's look close, get the magnifying glass out, you ant fuck. Let's see if Dungeon Siege 2 is the best ARPG ever made. Well, first things first, the game is just as botched running on Steam as the first game was. I mean, just look at this screen. I've seen more resolution in other games because they have better resolution. Sorry, my writers are on strike, but for real, this one is frankly fairly fucked up. It's got the right background, you know, this red right here, but this is the wrong stretch, and it's no stretch to say that this is another port without a lot of elbow grease because it's crashing again. The loading screen is the main character T-posing, which is actually beautiful. Keep that in the game. That being said, none of this is a detriment to the original product, of course, and from the rip, this game shows some mean quality. There's voice acting on tons of NPCs, and due to your ability to choose dialogue choices, the game feels much more intimate with the player. You have agency as opposed to being Bill, the simple, humble, jacked farmer, and so as a major player in this story, Gagagagu is here with no discerning, interesting characteristics, and honestly, you're kind of forced to be a distrusting, mean douche, so it's unique and I kind of like it. You being randomly short and dismissive with people, including your longtime bro-man elf friend, is funny to me.
I have a good my amulet's very special.
Fuck your amulet, you dumb shithead.
But story is a big up in this game because it feels naturally like you're being swept into the happenings, except when you're actually revealed to be a super awesome, powerful, ancient descendant guy, and that's lame as hell. I hate that shit. Delete it. Also, I don't know really what the plot is. There's too much talking. Something about finding 4 pieces of a shield to stop this scary man. Val dis dick, you know what I'm saying? For the most part, the setting and stuff is enjoyable, and it's so good that even your companions comment on the world from time to time. This is similar to the first game. You can recruit lots of different people, perhaps less separate characters than Dungeon Siege 1 overall, but in this game they each have different agency and opinions. My favorite character is the first given Big Ogre Man because he's like a one-track mind, focused large Chad man, and I respond well to that because that's what I am. I'm a large Chad man. You must believe me. I am. I have giant balls, 3 foot tall, 4 foot arms. I'm a total monster freak, and that's why he was a constant stable in my gaggle of pals. And gaggle is the correct term, as you are now limited to 4, 5, and 6 party members, dependent on the difficulty you're playing on. So for normal, you can have 4 people, and since there's the same 4 classifications of melee, range, combat magic, and nature magic classes, you get a pretty sensible party right off the bat. You can also take pets in the Dungeon Siege 2, and they seem to be fairly potent, but I'm not sure how they ever get stronger, so it felt more like a better than nothing kind of endeavor. There is an upgrade screen, but without buttons and the complete apathy to the notion of Googling something, I was at a loss. The Dire Wolf was unlocked for doing a side quest, and that made me think they were worth using for a little while, but I can't be too positive it was a great idea. Here's something akin to the first game real quick. From NPCs to environments with secrets, the aspect of scouring around for bonuses is so good here. There's a lot more fun to the system of hidden rooms, my favorite being doors that exist with requirements. Now you gotta think Final Fantasy V here. That's fucking right. Final Fantasy V. Now remember in that game there's a room with all the super equipment in them, hidden behind individual doors. Well, in Dungeon Siege 2 there's random doors all over the place with symbols above them like an archery target, and it's like, to open this dumbass door you must adore the boar. That's Bo said wrong to keep rhyming to appear talented at writing. Don't like it? Lick a generous percentage of my scrote. Anyway, what I mean is you need a character with 50 range to shoot this door and boom, it's open. Bonus chest and it's just fun. That's the whole point. But there's like a million of these little things. Open a barrel to reveal a secret door. Kill the secret enemy to get the secret stone. That secret stone opens a door in the first town that you'll never return to. It's wonderful. I really dig secret hunting and things that are obscure unless you're looking around pretty thoroughly. I hate when quote end quote secrets are just in a straight line from where the player starts. I say jumble it up a bit. Toss things in corners no human will ever find. It gives a lot of incentive to try and replay a game. But let's talk about DS2 in comparison to Dungeon Siege 1 to give a better idea on how the two products compare. Primarily, the control is incredible. If you only had ever played 2 games in your whole life, the first being Dungeon Siege 1, the second being Dungeon Siege 2, you'd have a large siege in your pants from the awesome improvement in feeling. It's fucking great. It's not the greatest ever, but considering we still have a 4-player party, as opposed to the typical one guy wandering around. They did a good job with how responsive and easy it all feels. The ways in which it has been improved is that you can only select one character at a time and control all their movements and attacks. The other party members are simple AI that follow one of two directives, mirror or rampage. At the press of a button, you can toggle which mode you're using, with Mirror just making them all follow your movement and attack targets, and Rampage causing them to do whatever the fuck they want. I primarily stuck it on Mirror and had a great time. And combat in general is a lot more interactive this time around. Now you have skills for each character related to their preferred method of attack. I'm getting stressed actually. This is going to require a lot of words in the correct order, so let's get ready for this. If you open skill menu, you get to see circles, orbs, buttons. Okay, let's do this a different way. In everybody's character menu, you can select any of the 4 combat styles, which reveals talent trees. This is already a step up from Dungeon Siege 1, because as you level up, you can invest in passives that are decently interesting. Obviously, this game is not going to match the complexity of a modern product like Path of Exile, and the trees offer simple things like piercing attacks, increased attack speed when dual wielding, more powerful fire spells. But then this is where it gets fun. Firstly, the simplicity is a boon because you're going with 4 to 6 playable characters, so you always seem to have a point or two to allocate, and if it was too complex, it'd be annoying. And as you put points into your characters, these circles start glowing, and all of these represent a special skill. And I'm not lying to you here, I'm not being insincere, I'm being completely serious. Add the ease, please. But this system is actually really fun. The interesting part is that you can unlock these by fulfilling specific combinations of talent allocations. So for example, this big bash attack is pretty basic, and it unlocks by putting a point into something like critical strike and weapon mastery or whatever. Beginning of the tree kind of stuff. Well, every single one of these special skills has an upgrade point, and you can ascertain this point by hovering over each independent skill itself. So if you want to upgrade the effect, you know where you have to pursue on the tree. And this is fun because you get to weigh the pros and cons of taking more talents for generally increasing your character's power, or by going for stuff that improves your special attacks. This is more investing than the concept that's usual of like put 20 skill points into this one or put 20 in that one, shit like that. And I gotta say, these special attacks can be absolutely fucking fat, like your mom's size. They're really fun to use. While you aren't by any means allowed to spam them, as they're more akin to ultimate abilities than regular ones, when you hit the waves of energy slashes on 10 enemies and the crit damage numbers pop up, it gives you a great sense of large penis. And that's a good point coming from the first game, but with there being damage numbers and more coherent combat in general, there's a greater feeling of overcoming bad odds. Some of the most fun I had in Dungeon Siege 2 involved using this Ogre man, who, by the way, when I met him, he was just in a hole, which is a beautiful image as he just stared at the hole's walls. Said to not laugh at him, and my brainiac character response is, laugh? No, I'm gaga gagu. But anyway, the point is, he's a huge melee man, and I decided to make him the designated tank. I slapped a shield on him, and his special ultimate ability was a large area taunt, making everything attack him, and at the same time, it gives him a huge armor increase, and if you spec into the talent that makes enemies take damage whenever you block, in conjunction with the ultimate attacks of your other allies, you bunch everything up and the damage just goes fucking sky high, and that's some pretty cool ARPG gameplay. Ordinarily, you can just use a fireball and shoot like crazy and nuke the world, but here it's a team effort and the burst comes at a cost. You can't spam anything. You play your cards right and you make good decisions, you get to emerge from a fight between you and 50 ogres and like, I don't know, a bunch of flying insect electric shooting bugs as well. But as if the improvements to the first game would stop sometimes, here's another one, auto-casting spells. Now this is beautiful. You get 2 magic slots for spells you just want to have up perpetually. So those copious buffs from the first game that I didn't want to spam use on everyone because it was tedious, well, choose your favorite 2 and they'll just be up without your involvement for the entire game. Obviously, I'd like it if you were allowed more than 2, but it is 2 per character, so if you have the required combat or nature magic skill, you can put a lot of free buffs on. That being said, I think hybrid classes are even less of an idea in Dungeon Siege 2, and I didn't do it at all. I used a tank, a dual-wielding melee character, an archer, and a dual-action combat and nature magic user. And compared to the 8-man football team I ran in the first game, there's a lot more intimacy and care here. You can really build to help each other in pre-planned ways here, and arming your group is also more simple and enjoyable. While the gear in the first Dungeon Siege wasn't bad, it was a little basic, opting to give players limited stat growth per piece, In Dungeon Siege 2 though, holy shit, sets, uniques, good non-uniques, I don't know what teal is supposed to be named, sorry about that, but in general there's an air of excitement around drops now, especially with sets. Whenever I saw a yellow item, I was thrilled, because when you have 8-piece sets, getting more and more of them is just ass loads of ass, dumb trucks of fun. 2-set bonus already powerful, and then you toss a 3rd piece in there and holy shit, look at that clump of text. For example, let's use the Undying Warlord, then that's a real set right there, and this has 5 pieces total. You get 2 pieces and you're looking at +1 to melee skills. Get the whole thing and you're getting +4 to all melee skills on top of just absolute powerhouse offense and defense, and I gotta be honest, this is one of the best set systems I've ever seen. I really love the collection aspect in ARPGs, and I had a lot of fun putting together as many pieces as I could. My tank getting so many items from the Larenthal's Legacy set, making him beefier than your average RB sandwich, was really enjoyable. The other rarities, even unique included, are just okay. There's actually not a lot of discernible oh shit moments between them. I found a lot of the same uniques, and most of them were low level or just kind of mediocre, and never did I have an exciting moment with them, but I'm sure somewhere in the system that would exist. The teal items are worth using, but the stats would be all over the place. Battle Axe of Big Ass would just have intelligence on it, for example, so it was kind of whatever worked when you needed it. But that's the appreciated part. Gear would be more juicy than it was in the first game, because I had stuff with like plus 16 to dexterity, which is just ridiculous when considering in DS1 you'd be happy to get plus 2 to something. And since there are now skills in the game, skill talent modifiers were awesome, really improved the gearing excitement overall. There's also enchanting, and it's not overly enchanting, I will say, although I'm probably wrong. It's probably the most broken part of the game for some weird reason I don't know, but for your average player, it wasn't too much. I got so much junk stacking up in my inventory, it's like someone's closet here, carrying around bits and bobs, and for a while I had no idea how to utilize them. When they say enchanted item gets plus 4 strength, I think that sounds cool, and I try to use them, and no luck. It's not until I find an enchantable item of whatever that I realize you can only build an item when it's got no text on it to begin with. So I went and did this once. I needed a better chest armor, and the interface opens a tiny inventory square, and you just Tetris in a bunch of random items to make a hodgepodge of stats. And maybe that's meta, maybe it's great, but I found things just like this, so if anything, it's just a way to pad out your characters. But what is the use of all this cool equipment and interesting skills without some good enemies? And I'm happy to say the developers actually put a lot of effort into making boss fights more than just big sponges. Like for this guy, you had to kill these little tree saplings to lower the big tree's shields, or use a big rock to hide from this mega breath, or take this dragon. This was one of the hardest fights in the game, but it's a really cool battle. You can't actually deal with him yourself. You need to aim and fire this ballista to deal any kind of damage to his huge health pool of 100,000. So the rhythm goes, dodge the fire breath, which by the way sucks so much dick, because even though this game is a lot better about the AI moving with you, they sometimes just don't care and stand in the fire and die. But regardless, you run around, dodge, wait for him to land, shoot him for about 10,000 damage, and then endure a few waves of enemies while he just circles back. It's cinematic, it's interesting, and it's more akin to a platformer boss than an ARPG one. Enemy variety also shines as there's a lot of models and they feel visually distinct from each other. The big brute classification is fun to beat up on as they are so tanky, and you get a high degree of satisfaction when you actually can break their defense. The little scrappy, high damage dealing pests are really enjoyable to cleave through with a special ability. Also, upon save, things respawn, so you can go around and bully the groups of whatever the fuck again, and that gives your plus magic find statistic gear a good use in the long run. In terms of you and your respawning, you actually do this time around. You don't have to reload a save if you die. Once all your characters are knocked down and killed, the same way it worked in the first game, you get the option to respawn in town, and once there you'll find you have no gear equipped anymore. Your bodies are back where you died, and you can go and recover them yourself, or pay the Gravekeeper man a few bucks to restore them for you. This is like 80% of all other ARBs now, so that's fine. There's another elephant in the room, but it's a happy, good elephant, and that's quests, because there's a ton of them and are both interesting and involved with the world, and most are optional. Like Lothar, my big ogre pal, he's accused by some guy that he stole a golden cloak, and Chad Lothar just squares up his chin and says nope, at which point you have to go and prove his innocence. Now, this is cool because A, this quest is dependent on who you're using in your party, and B, it's kind of a fun concept. It's not world ending, it's just kind of side material. The guy who gives this quest is just in a random building. It's something you can miss. It gives life to an otherwise pointless cave area. The game is littered with this kind of thing, and I want to go back and explore more nooks, more side places, and see just how much more additional content there is. Oh, and yeah, before I forget to mention this shit, there's a weird mechanic in this game. It's not even that good if I'm being honest. It's just some far out there experimental thing they tried to make work, but there's built-in cheat codes that work at specific shrines. Littered around the world are certain books that give you certain phrases. You put in like, I don't know, Dono Armorum, and the party gets a defensive buff for a few minutes, and by put in, I mean you literally have to type it, like typing in the dead level shit, and I have one thing to say about this.
This is some fucking weird shit here.
I don't really know what the idea was, but it's a fun incentive to open up your lore tab in the journal from time to time, and when you uncover a new one of these, it's pretty interesting. You're encouraged to try it out at the next opportunity. But I think the game would be identical in terms of its enjoyability with or without this, so it's kind of a push. And as much as I have praised this game for being a fun time, there's a few murky spots to be honest. Time to be shithead Seer again. Let's start bitching. Like I said, there's a lot of little bugs with the AI that suck. Instead of the loose gaggle following they had in the first game, there's now a strange clump they like to do. This is fine, but it puts your weak characters right in the faces of evil, and while the first game's mechanics of hitting the H key to have everyone take a sip of a health potion is still here, and it works to grant a big boost to survivability in the presence of shit hitting you, it's still annoying in several instances how limited your response to damage in combat feels. Yeah, there's a pause button again. I'm also not using it again, but to be fair, it's probably nowhere near as necessary. The game is a lot smoother overall, but still controlling up to 6 playable characters has the potential to annoy you with how they interact and move around. Also, occasionally there's some really weird parts of the following system. Like once I defeated the Act 1 boss, a portal opened and I made my way across like an ocean and shit, and I was like, cool, that's fun. Walked around for a bit before realizing my humble giant ogre man was stuck on a large rock and was still in Act 1, which amazed me. I couldn't even believe the game lets you exist that far apart. This is like if your mercenary in Diablo 2 got stuck in a corner of the den of evil and just never fucking found their way out. I will say, there's a bit of a negative emotion in how Dungeon Siege 2 gives up a considerable amount of the strange identity the first game had in service of a better feeling game, but it's a fair trade. Dungeon Siege 1 had road trip energy, a zero to hero appeal, and it's reflected by the fact you have no town portals and you had to walk across the vast expanse with you and your gang, no load times, and a complete battalion at your disposal. You aren't anyone special, really, you just build a humble, simple, jacked farmer. But in Dungeon Siege 2, we have load times all day, a story that involves you extremely specifically. We're just the mega cool man who needs to save everyone. There's town portals and waypoints, which are nice, of course. All these things are just simply differences in feeling, but they're less unique. Dungeon Siege 1 may be more memorable in a way, but that's where I'd stop with the praise over the second game, because everything feels so much better here. Personally, I'm excited to replay this game. There's a lot I want to try out, including the harder difficulties and even the expansion, which, yeah, I didn't mention the first game's expansion on account that Steam doesn't even sell it because some lawyer is laughing it up somewhere, but regardless, kind people have pointed me in the right directions for the second game. As my closing point, by the way, you can't respec your skill points ever unless you have either the expansion or you cheat, but even with the expansion, you only get one full respec opportunity, so that's kind of like a 45% negative. A little too stiff for my liking. Sorry for the segueing this deep into the conclusion. I just didn't have anywhere else to put that little nugget of information. But here's another little fact here. I feel that Dungeon Siege 2 could possibly be the best ARPG ever made. I'm going to add it to my list of games to replay and reassess. Joining these products right here, look around, look at these thumbnails, remember all the good memories? So we'll be back to review and re-swear soon enough. But wait a second, that's not the end of Dungeon Siege February. If you thought I was done, there's a third game to check out, and as far as I've seen, the game is usually described with words like shit and fuck, so this is going to be great. See you on the 29th, maybe, I think so, for the final installment of Dungeon Siege. But emphasize the dung in this title. There we go, thanks. Take care, bye now.